Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, January 25th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 220 days. The game against Michigan in 306 days. We're also now just 9 days away from National Signing Day. And while that is not nearly as big an event as it was before the advent of early signing day, it could still turn into a very, very, very important one for Ohio State this year. Buckeye Scoop recruiting analyst Marc Givler is my guest this morning. Marc, it looks like there are basically just two names Ohio State fans need to be keeping an eye on at this point. Is that right?
Yep, pretty much just down to two, unless there's a late surprise we're not aware of right now. But yeah, right now it's JT Tuimoloau, five-star defensive lineman out of Washington, state of Washington, and top 100 linebacker Raesjon Davis. Their day. So those are the two right now. Don't think anyone else is going to pop up late on us, but you never know.
So OSU got some encouraging news on actually both of their top remaining targets this weekend. First, Davis. He just made the cross-country trip with his parents to see Ohio State. There was a whole lot of stuff he could not do while he was seeing Ohio State. But what should people read into the fact that that trip happened at all?
Yeah, it wasn't looking good there the last few weeks. All the momentum seemed to be toward USC, and then all of a sudden this visit does happen after it had been talked about for months and never materialized. So I think it was more for the parents. Raesjon's been to Ohio State twice before this. I think there was a conversation that happened here at some point, maybe in the last week or two, where it was like, look, Ohio State's a serious possibility here, and if in order to actually go from a serious possibility to actually signing him, I think that the parents needed to see, just because I think things got so chaotic with LSU the last year. I mean, he committed to a school that was across the country, and just look at what's happened to LSU in the last 10 months. There's NCAA stuff. I believe they're on this would be like, I think the third defensive coordinator I think they're going to have. They're going to have position coach changes in the secondary and or on the defense at LSU. And I think there was kind of a concern about, okay, if you're going to go somewhere that's that far away, then we kind of need to have a better feel on things. And so they all came out. I think it went very well. I'm not ready to sound the alarms that he's definitely going to Ohio State or anything like that. I'm going to say something similar to what I said when Emeka Egbuka visited Oklahoma, and kind of everyone was panicked about, oh, is he going to go to Oklahoma now? I think people need to kind of sit back and let this process for a few days. Sure, on Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday, that's a big visit. There's a lot of momentum there for Ohio State, but how is he going to feel once he gets back to SoCal, once life returns to normal for a week? What's he thinking on Friday, or what's he thinking, on this following Saturday? I think that's the important thing now, is kind of how is this processed? And of course, the family's going to have some conversations about this with just the geography differences between Ohio State and USC.
Yeah, and it may not just be what he's thinking on Friday. It may be what his folks are thinking on Friday too. That's not necessarily a one-person decision. So yeah, that is. But I mean, unquestionably, something that looked like pretty much a USC lock 2-3 weeks ago. I mean, there, at least as you said, some very positive momentum for Ohio State there. So that's. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on that one. Should be another interesting week at BuckeyeScoop.com. That's my professional opinion on that. If he does sign, if Davis does come to Ohio State, where does he fit in with the Buckeye defense? He's a linebacker. Do you have a sense for where they envision Davis potentially fitting on that defense if he does end up signing?
Yeah, I mean, they like to cross-train guys, so I don't know that you can just pencil him in at one specific spot, but I kind of view him, kind of more in that Baron Browning, Will type of role. He's not a tall guy, but he's a good edge rusher. He's good out in space. To me, he is kind of more of an outside guy, but he could play Mike. I mean, he is a powerful kid. But I think probably one of those two spots. I don't think you're going to see him playing maybe the Pete Warner role, where he's doing too much in terms of coverage. But he's a guy who can definitely come off the edge. He's extremely well coached. He's well developed. He's not someone he's not a raw player. He's not a guy who I think is going to take a few years to kind of catch up to his physical attributes. I think he's a guy who comes in and comes from a great high school program, maybe the best in the country right now. And, just a guy who plays really hard, very physical kid, tough kid. And like I said, I like what he does out on the perimeter as kind of an edge rusher and blitzer and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they mix that in. But to me, he's kind of fits in a little bit more of that Baron Browning type of player.
The other big remaining target you mentioned earlier, JT Tuimoloau, 5-star defensive end from Washington. Adding him would give Ohio State a pair of top 10 or even top 5 defensive linemen in this class, depending on which source you want to go by. We've talked about him as someone who may wait to sign until later in the spring to see if they can get any visits. But over the weekend, there was some very, very encouraging news from some of our insiders on him. What can you tell us about the latest on JT?
Yeah, I mean, my stance right now is I'm pretty convinced they're going to end up getting JT Tuimoloau. It's just a matter of when. Is it going to be February 3rd? Is it going to be April 3rd? Is it going to be June 3rd? That to me is maybe an even bigger question mark right now than where he ultimately ends up. I think a lot of that's going to depend on the NCAA. April 15th right now, that's workable for Tuimoloau to go take visits. If it gets kicked down the road, June 1st, I think, is still even workable. He could just do his visits in June. But if we start talking about late June or July, at that point, I think he would almost have to force himself to make an announcement. It just doesn't seem like there would be the potential really for visits at that point in time to get his life together and get ready to go to college. So, the sources close to Ohio State that I've talked to aren't expecting anything on February 3rd, but no one's ruling it out yet. I would imagine he takes a little time with this. I think people are under the impression that if he doesn't sign on February 3rd, that he would have to wait like several months to make a decision. And that's not the case. Once February 3rd hits, he can decide any day he wants. If he just wants to take 5 or 6 extra days and just kind of think things over, he can do that. If he wants to take 2 or 3 months, he can do that. So there's really no restriction on that at this point once you get to February 3rd. So I'm expecting a delay of some kind, but we'll see how that goes, and we'll see kind of what the NCAA does with the April 15th date. I think that could be important as well.
Alabama is the competition for him, it seems like, kind of the most likely destination if it is in Ohio State. They're also kind of the measuring stick right now. I mean, and they have commitments from a pair of offensive tackles who are both top 10 players overall in this class, which is, that's basically unprecedented to have 2 top 10 players at the same position in the same class. So for Ohio State to land a pair of top 10 defensive ends also would be pretty much unprecedented in a lot of ways. But in other ways, it's basically keeping up with the Joneses, or I guess keeping up with the Sabins in this case. But that potentially sets up this really interesting dynamic for the next 3, maybe 4 years of these 2, pair of top 10 offensive tackles, pair of top 10 defensive linemen, potentially going head to head in, New Orleans or Glendale or Pasadena or wherever they end up playing.
Yeah, look, when you break down football at this, especially in today's quick passing attack, you have to have a quarterback, you have to be able to protect your quarterback, and you have to be able to harass the other team's quarterback. That's really what football comes down to at this point. We can get into the specifics of coverages and skill players and things like that. But at the end of the day, do you have a quarterback? Can you protect him? And can you get after the other team's quarterback? So that's really what this boils down to. And I don't know what rankings we're using, but there aren't 10 better players than Jack Sawyer. So let's get that out of the way. I'm not quite as familiar with Tuimoloau in terms of in-person evaluations, but I highly doubt there's 10 better than him as well. So getting 2 elite pass rushers, whether Tuimoloau plays outside or, personally, I think he's kind of tailor-made for a Larry Johnson defensive line, because I think he'll be a really good interior guy too in the rushman package. But talk about 2 guys who can just get after the quarterback. And these aren't your skinny little edge rushers either. They're both probably going to play in the 260, 270 range, maybe Tuimoloau probably in the 290 range. So these are guys who are going to be stout against the run, but they're also going to give you that electric pass rushing ability. Kind of, Jack's kind of the third Bosa. It just it means everything. You saw what happened. They couldn't harass Mac Jones, last, not to open old wounds, but that was such an important component of that game was getting pressure, and they weren't able to do that. You bring in 2 guys, instant impact guys. Those guys are playing year one. Jack Sawyer's going to play this fall. There's no question. So you can't really overstate the importance of landing 2 guys like that at that position.
this weekend was also move-in time for the early enrollee freshman. Sawyer was one of the guys who is now on campus. He's officially signed, sealed, and delivered into Columbus, along with Travion Henderson, Kyle McCord, Tyleek Williams, Denzel Burke, Evan Pryor, Emeka Igbuka, Marvin Harrison, Zen Mahalski, Reed Carrico, Jesse Mirko, Jensen Dunn, Ben Chrisman, Jaden Ballard, and Sam Hart. Whew, take a deep breath. That was a lot of names. They brought in the majority of their class is already going to be ready to go through spring ball for them. Right now, all of those guys do have to quarantine for a week before they can start working out. And we're going to end up taking a deeper dive on those guys a little later on in the week. But Mark, is there one of them on offense and one on defense who you are particularly interested in seeing practice and potentially play this spring?
Yeah, on offense, Travion Henderson it has to be ready to play. I think. I don't think you can. And it's almost unfair to say that, but I don't know that there's another guy in this class offensively that you would even need to make a mention of. In terms of they need him next year. I think they need Travion Henderson to be a significant part of their offense next year. It's the one offensive concern I have of this team in terms of. In the context of winning a national championship. Obviously, they have good enough running backs to win the Big Ten or whatever, but in the context of winning a national championship, being the team to beat for a national championship, I think they just need a little bit more of a difference maker at running back, obviously with Trey Sermon not returning. And Travion Henderson gives them that. He's a home run hitter. He's a guy who catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's unbelievable in space. So just a guy that would give them a different dimension if he can pick things up quickly, stay healthy, buy in, do all the things that J.K. Dobbins did really a few years ago. So I think that's definitely the guy to watch there. Defensively, I think there's a few different directions you could go, but I still look at Jack Sawyer. I look, Tyreke Smith, really good player. Zach Harrison, really good player. They have some guys coming back that give me some confidence about their defensive ends and their pass rush next year. But I think Sawyer is I think he's a special player. He's probably the best, defensive player I've seen come out of Ohio in quite some time. Premium position like that, we've seen them get Joey Bosa on the field early. We've seen them get Nick Bosa on the field early. I know that's ridiculously high praise, but that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a top 10 player in the country, a 5-star defensive end. I think that's the expectation is maybe he doesn't start. I think Harrison and Smith are probably going to be the guys there, but I think you have to expect a lot of reps there, and for him to come in and get 4, 5, 6 sacks as a freshman, I think that's got to be the bar.
That would put him kind of at or ahead of the pace of Nick Bosa, Chase Young as true freshmen. So that would be okay. That would probably mean good things if that's where he's producing this fall. We went through all the guys who are on campus already. Here's a list of the guys who are not early enrolling, but who have signed already. Donovan Jackson, Ja'Kalen Johnson, Mike Hall, Jordan Hancock, Andre Turrentine, and Jalen Johnson. So if you're paying attention and you notice there's 6 of those guys, 4 of them are defensive backs. So, and then obviously anyone who they would sign next week or later this spring would obviously be a summer enrollee as well. But, 4 of those guys are defensive backs. And corner is a position where the Buckeyes need someone to step up. I mean, that's one of the big kind of holes they've got to fill this fall. Their 2 true corner prospects, I think, are not going to be here until the summer. That probably makes it. I mean, it's never easy to contribute as a freshman corner, regardless. But does the fact that these guys are not here for spring ball, does that make it even more important for Ohio State to do find 1 or 2 guys in that transfer portal to maybe patch over that looming hole?
I think regardless they have to. I'm a big fan of both those guys. We're talking about J.K. Johnson and Jordan Hancock specifically. I'm a big fan of both those guys. I think Hancock might need a year just to kind of get a little stronger. J.K., tough situation with not having football in the St. Louis, the private schools. He's a kid who I think is a little more physically mature, could maybe step in and give you some minutes. But, we look back at like what Jeff Okudah did, and Jeff Okudah wasn't a day one starter, and it's hard to anticipate anyone would ever be, so far ahead of Jeff Okudah coming in that it's just one of those deals where you can't expect that right away. So either way, I mean, I think best case scenario is one of them can be a rotation guy, be your third corner and kind of rotate in. Maybe by the end of the year, be ready for more responsibility, but I think they have to go portal regardless. They need a guy. Now, is the portal going to provide? That's going to be the problem. I mean, there's not a lot. It's interesting. These guys don't show up in the portal that often. I know there's a lot of talk about Elias Ricks right now. He's not in the portal yet. I'm a little skeptical that even if he entered the portal, that Ohio State would be the spot. But there's nothing there yet right now, so you have to wait and see how that plays out. Otherwise, a lot of these portal guys, you're either getting a guy who couldn't beat out somebody else at another school, and it's like, well, at that point, why don't you just play one of your young players, or you're gonna have to mine someone who's at a lower program who maybe wants to bump up a level or something, and those guys are tough to find as well. So it's not easy, but I think they have to try and figure something out there. You have to have another guy at corner this year.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be one of the major stories to watch during this offseason. We've got the recruiting stuff coming up. We've got transfer portal drama coming up. Spring practice, not that far away. They're going to start winter workouts on February 1st, I believe, and then early March, be rolling into spring practice. Spring game should be probably on track. I don't think they've announced an official date, but sometime kind of mid-April or so is probably about right. So we are heading into a fascinating time. We didn't even mention a quarterback controversy, quarterback battle. Like, man, oh man, they got a coaching staff spot they got to fill. There is a ton of news and a ton of stuff going on. There is no offseason. There's no offseason with Ohio State football right now, which means, hey, this would be a great time to become a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. But don't take my word for it. But on my Twitter account, I retweeted a bunch of people. I tweeted out the some of our big news that was breaking this weekend. I'm just going to give you a sample of people and their responses. Definitely glad I joined. If you aren't a member, you are missing out. Let's see. It's worth it. And why would any Buckeye fan not be on this site at this point? Doesn't mean you have to quit your others, but there's literally nothing close, period. And then after period, he put an exclamation point, which really tells you something. When even period has an exclamation point, that tells you something. Why would you not be a member of BuckeyeScoop.com? This isn't me talking. This is Kyle from Twitter. Why would you not? It is literally just take, don't go out and get coffee like twice this month. Make your coffee at home. Ta-da! You now have the money to pay for membership at BuckeyeScoop.com and have access to our incredible network of insiders, all of the information you were looking for, all the latest news on all of these fascinating stories we were just talking about, plus all the other stuff that's going to be going on. Yeah, there's also a basketball season going on. We have some great basketball insider coverage, basketball recruiting coverage that just really not finding anywhere else right now. So you should make sure you check out BuckeyeScoop.com for all of that. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, wherever fine podcasts are sold. You can find all of our podcasts. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find those. You can subscribe right there. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review, which helps folks find those shows as well. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.